Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm 16, and recently 3 of my ex-stepmothers tried to take everything we had away. Yes, 3 of them. It was a full-on war between me and my father, and the evil trio. You see, my dad owns a big company, and we're pretty well off. Despite being a big businessman, he was always a very sweet and caring man. His only fault was that he always chose the wrong women. The first one was my mum, who left us when I was 5. She would always berate my dad if he did anything wrong, or even said something she didn't like. She would cry and lie on the floor, trying to look like a victim, and my dad would always give her anything she wanted. She demanded a divorce once she met another guy. My father was devastated, and he lost half his fortune in the divorce process. I didn't understand much because I was only 5. I just remember Dad crying a lot and spending time somewhere other than at home. For 3 or so years, it was just me and my dad, and they were honestly the best years of my life. Then, during the next 10 years, he married 2 more times and just lived with a third lady for a little while. All of them were tall, beautiful, and very evil. I don't even want to call their names. Instead, I will use their nicknames. The first one was the Vulture. She swooped down on us when she noticed my dad's weakness. He opened up to her, telling her everything, including about our money. At this moment, the Vulture suddenly became very altruistic and caring. Dad fell in love, they got married, and then she enjoyed a few years living a luxurious lifestyle. Swimming pools at expensive resorts, fur coats and martinis. Sometimes all 3 of those things at the same time. At some point, my dad's company was facing troubles, so Dad had to tell her, "Honey, we have to reduce our expenses for a while." Poof! She disappeared like a ninja, taking some of Dad's belongings in the divorce process. Well, at least she wasn't doing bad things to me, unlike the second one. The second one was the werewolf. She met my father at a charity event, which she herself organised. My father fell in love with her kindness, the complete opposite of the Vulture. Right? Wrong? Well, she was good with my dad, but she still drained his wallet like a vacuum. She was also nice with him. Every time she stayed alone with me, she turned into an evil witch. She screamed and locked me inside my room, but the second Dad returned, her face would change from, "I'm gonna eat you and destroy your life," to, "I love children, charity and baking cookies." Of course, my dad refused to believe me, until I actually secretly recorded all of it. At least this time Dad was smart enough to get a prenup. With the third one, he was even smarter. He didn't marry her. I'll call her Venus. Why? Well, Venus was the Roman goddess of fertility. Like the 2 other ladies, she kept buying extremely expensive things for herself, and she begged my dad to marry her, but being burnt 3 times already, Dad refused. So she was like, "Surprise, surprise, I'm pregnant. Marry me." Dad was like, "Okay, I will, as soon as you do a paternity test." Well, a few weeks later, she did. And oops, Dad wasn't the dad. Without any hesitation, he put her suitcase outside and told her to figure it out herself. Dad got depressed again and promised he wouldn't date anyone else ever again. I felt sad, but also relieved, because he had such poor taste, as you may have noticed. For a few months we lived comfortably, enjoying each other's company, but then the evil trio returned with a lawsuit. It turns out that Venus had found all the other ladies, and together they decided to finally consume what was remaining of my dad and his money. One day he got a call from Venus. She said that all of them needed to meet. So they did, at a cafe. He was shocked to find out all 3 of them were together. The werewolf was the leader, because, well, she was the smartest one. With evil grins, they presented my father with this big document. Basically, they came up with a story that my father had abused all of them, physically and mentally, and while there was a small chance the court would believe one lady, with 3 of them, and 1 being pregnant. Of course, the lawsuit could be avoided if Dad would just pay them money. Of course, I was completely against him paying any money to those witches, but he was scared. so he took a big sum of money and gave it to them later on. I knew that wasn't the end of it, and after a couple of months they demanded even more money. And despite my protests, my dad paid them again. And the third time I got back home, and they were in our house, sitting on our couch, talking with my father. That's when I completely lost it. I took all the papers they brought with them and threw them out of the window. And the vulture was filming it, so I tried to take her phone away, but she blocked me with her high heels, and I swear that she hissed at me. After that, I screamed, "Get out!" The vulture and the Venus were angry and nervous, but the werewolf calmed them down, continuing to smile, and added, "Well, just more evidence for us, darling." And I looked at my father, this strong and smart man whose exes, his only poison, was slowly killing him. Well, you fight poison with poison, right? Or was it about the fire? It doesn't matter. What I did next was weird. I contacted my mum. I did it because I knew for sure that she had been trying to get in contact with my dad for years, to try to apologise to him and get him back. I hadn't seen her for all these years, so she was surprised when I called her and wanted to meet. She sounded happy. She looked bad. Very bad. Very poor. She was smiling and saying how happy she was to see me. I didn't want to hear it, so I cut straight to my plan. I wanted her to infiltrate the evil trio and gain evidence that they were just playing us and that none of it was true. In return, I promised her a large sum of money. I mean, it was better to pay once than indefinitely. She agreed to do it. To be sure, I asked her to say on video that my father never did anything wrong to her, and to say clearly what our plan was, so she couldn't backstab us as well. I was extremely nervous about all of this and was eagerly awaiting the results. The stupidity of the evil trio really helped with the situation. My mum told them almost directly that I contacted her and that she wanted in, and those witches didn't even get suspicious because they were so glad that they had even more power now. Moreover, they had this chat on Facebook where they openly discussed their plan. All my mother had to do was just screenshot all of this and destroy everything they had worked so hard on for months. The next time they came to our house, demanding money while pouring themselves my father's wine, like they owned the place, my dad was shocked to see my mum with them. I showed them the screenshots, saying that we would go to the police. My dad was speechless and even scared that his own daughter was capable of such a cunning plan. The werewolf quickly admitted defeat and started to put her coat on without saying a word. Venus wasn't there because she had finally given birth, but the vulture started to scream and trash our house. She was smashing plates and then kicked our TV, breaking the screen into 1,000 little pieces. Dad called the police and I was filming all of it. The werewolf just left quietly. At this point, the vulture took my phone out of my hands and stepped on it with her high heels. She tried to attack my mum, but Dad stopped her, so she stormed out of the house and started to smash our windows. I followed her, took our garden hose and sprayed it all over her, which calmed her down for a second. My dad was just watching with a confused look as everything happened. The police had arrived at this point, and they were in awe of the stupidity of the situation. Then they took her in, and believe me, she was struggling like a seasoned criminal. After the police left, the three of us were left there, sitting quietly in our living room. It was extremely awkward. Mum took her bag and said, "Well, I'm going to go then." But my dad stopped her and asked if she wanted to stay for dinner. It was kind of surreal to have dinner with both Mum and Dad. The weirdest part was that nobody was talking, just silently chewing food, not paying attention to each other, or the broken windows, broken TV screen and broken plates. Afterwards, Dad wanted to give my mum some money for helping, but she refused and asked to have a relationship with me instead. It's not like I wanted it, but I was curious, so I agreed. Basically, I only had to see her 1 or 2 times a month and spend a few hours with her. My mum turned out to be a completely different person from what I had imagined. Once we were eating at a cafe and she had a little bit to drink and decided to tell me their whole story. In short, Dad had been in love with her since high school, and she would always tell him that she would only go out with him if he became a rich man. Somehow he did. Maybe he got lucky, but he did it specifically to win over Mum. Weird. And then she got bored of him. But after years of bad relationships with guys who didn't care about her, and without having any real ambition in life, she slowly started to realise that she missed the chance to be with the only man who loved her. She never loved him back, but not loving a rich and kind man was better than what she had now. At this point, she kinda started to cry. Years of a bad life had changed her, and she at least wanted to have some kind of relationship with me. At some point, Dad even asked me if it would be a good idea to start dating Mum again, and I had to honestly say no to him. Now I've decided to study really hard, so I won't have to live like my mother or my father. Children think that adults are smarter and know all about life, but sometimes they really don't.